Hello everyone, this is Francesca. I am an Italian knitter and this is episode number 14th of an Italian knitting podcast. I'm a software engineer and I am based in the northeast of Italy. I live with my husband, my 2-year-old daughter, and my very fluffy cat. And today I feel like I'm wearing pajamas because technically I am wearing pajamas in the bottom part of my body, but I'm also wearing a sweater which is kind of reminiscent to me of the typical gray color of pajamas. I don't know, the pajamas that I've had in my life, I guess. I'm not sure, but this is a no-frills sweater by Petite Knit, and the only kind of modification slash customization I've done is that I've knit half twisted rib for the neckline and the cuffs and the bottom hem as well, and I think it just gives it a little bit more of an elegant look. Again, I just call this pajama looking, so maybe the elegant look is not working, but I don't know, I feel like this is such an easy modification slash customization to make to any sweater, and I feel like it just looks a bit tidier. Also because my 1x1 ribbing, like regular knits and regular purls, looks a little bit sloppy. Not sloppy, but just uneven, and I feel like the half twisted rib version looks much neater and, I don't know, more polished and professional, like I am. Today for you, I don't have any finished objects, but I have a few works in progress. And I also would like to talk to you a little bit about my recent travels. I went to Minneapolis to a couple of yarn stores, and I also went to Knit Italy, which is an Italian knitting conference, which was so fun. I'll talk about the trips at the end of this episode if you want to stick around. Cool. First, work in progress. Honestly, this is almost done, and I thought I had it done for today, but I'll tell you what happened. So this is a test knit for Emily from Gently Chaotic Knits. She has a podcast here on YouTube if you're looking for new videos to binge. And the sweater is called Dad's Sweater, and it's inspired from the sweaters that her dad wears all the time. And it's a very comfortable, roomy fit. I think the sleeve is technically called a set-in sleeve. So you knit the front and the back, and you pick up stitches along the sleeve, and you knit a little bit of a cap, a sleeve cap. That's the term, a sleeve cap, and then you knit the sleeve as you normally would. So it's not a raglan construction, which is my preferred mindless way of knitting sweaters. But I'm so interested to see if I'll get a lot of wear out of this compared to, I guess, raglan sweaters, which is almost everything that I have in my wardrobe. And the yarn that I'm using is a combination of Knitting for Olive yarns. I have the Merino and the soft silk Mohair, which is exactly like described, very soft. The color is rust, and I've never thought I was like a red color person. I never thought I liked red for garments, that's what I meant to say, but I guess this is not a true red, right? It's like more of a rust, kind of a burnt shade, very autumny, very fall-like, and I think it'll go well in my wardrobe for the next few months. I really like test knitting in general. I think I find the kind of community aspect of being in the same Instagram group or some other type of group and chatting and sending pictures, I really like that. It kind of adds to my knitting experience a little bit. But I also am really liking this specific test knit for Emily. I think it's very well organized. She sends updates to the pattern as like a new PDF for you to download and read through. She replies to all the questions as soon as possible. I don't know, a very lovely experience so far. And I was saying that I thought I would be done for today in terms of the sweater, because what happened is I actually finished it, I think yesterday, no, a couple of days ago. And I had started the ribbing here where this pin is, and so kind of the ribbon came to here, and I tried it on and it was a little bit too short for my tastes. It felt like one of those sweaters that I would try on at like Zara or H&M, like fast fashion stores, and I would regularly buy those for lack of better options. And I have a couple in my wardrobes that I wear, especially like in the summertime. They're like cotton, plant-based fibers sweaters. However, there's no reason for me to keep a length of a sweater that's not perfect for me, because I can just frog a little bit and re-knit it as long as I want to, especially because I hadn't run out of yarn or anything like that, so there's a good amount for me to finish the length of the body as long as I want it, and that's what I'm doing. And so I knit, I would say maybe like 2 inches, is that 5 centimeters, something like that, longer than what I had before. And then I started the ribbing, and I'll see how long I want the ribbing to be, but this time around I'll make sure to try it on every step of the way. And what I've done is I attached an extra cord on my Chigo's interchangeable circular needles, and so it makes it long enough for me to just slip on and try it on and kind of adjust the length and see if I'm done with the length that I want. I confess I didn't do that the first time around, and that's why it came up too short. What I've done is I just kind of laid on top of another sweater that I like the length of, and kind of like eyeballed it and like, okay, seems like they're the same length. However, like when you try on a sweater, that's when you actually see the proper fit and how the length will look on you. So I don't know, I guess just a note for my future self to always put on a longer cable and try it on. So I'll try it on for you if you'd like. I mean, you don't have a say in this because you're watching a recording that already happened, so. Okay, there you go. This is the almost finished sweater. I tried to tack in all the stray pieces so that I pretend that it's almost done. It's not. That's it. Please appreciate my pajama bottoms, but other than that, yes, this is the right way to try on a sweater. Not just eyeball it, just actually try it on. The neckline is a folded neckline, and I think this is actually my first time knitting a folded neckline. Is that true? I think it might be. And what I've actually done is I knit double the length like the pattern suggests, and instead of binding off the neckline while also picking up stitches here, so do all at once, I actually in the end casted off the collar, and then I sew it down in the inside of the sweater with just a regular whip stitching, I think it's called, like a very loose stitching with my needle and the same yarn that the sweater is made of. I would recommend that method, honestly. It doesn't take a lot of time to bind off and then sew it down. It doesn't feel like a waste of time. It's very quick. So I would recommend that. It felt very fiddly to me when I tried to bind off and also kind of pick up stitches at the same time to do it all at once. So if you try and you're struggling with it, just go back to regular cast off and sewing the collar down. No one will know. Would you have known that I didn't follow the required steps? No, right? The test knit period is almost done. I think we still have 10 days or so to finish everything up. And so my goal is to knit a little bit more of the ribbing and cast it off, and that's it. So for the sleeves, I followed what the pattern recommended, which is a tubular bind off. You can kind of see that this is a tubular bind off, right? And when I bind off the body the first time when it was too short, I also did a tubular bind off. However, I don't like it. I don't mind doing it. Like, I think it's a little bit tedious and slow, but you can watch something like a podcast or, I don't know, listen to music or something, and it'll go fast enough, like you'll be able to finish. However, there are a couple of downsides for me. So the actual look of the sweater, I guess in my case, the bottom hem flares out a little bit to me. I don't know if you can tell from the sleeve. I don't know. Is that a good example? Maybe. The bind-off flares a little bit. If you're wearing it, you cannot really tell because your body stretches the ribbing most of the times. So in this case, like the sleeve, you cannot really tell that it flares out. And when I was wearing the sweater, you couldn't really tell because anyway, the ribbing is stretched across kind of my bottom. However, if you kind of hold it up, you can see it flares out. The other thing is that to unpick, I guess unravel that bind off, I mean, it's not a nightmare because there are 100% worse things in life and in knitting. However, the combination of the tubular bind off and the fact that this is a mohair combination, so mohair and merino, made it very tedious to unpick because you actually had to break some of the fibers, the mohair fibers apart to kind of go back and undo the cast off. Undoing the ribbing was very easy, it just went by fairly fast. It is a sticky fiber to undo, so it doesn't like frog instantly, but it's still like very doable with care. The actual bind off row, it took me an hour, maybe more, an hour and a half. Is that true? Probably. So I mean, I don't know. I'm glad I tried. I don't know now that I'm almost ready to bind off the body again. I don't know if I'll do a tubular bind off. I might do that because that's what the pattern calls for. And I'm a very careful and meticulous test knitter. I guess knitter in general, probably. Is that true? Anyway, but since you cannot really see in pictures the bind off that you used, I don't think, I might just do modified super stretchy bind off. And by modified super stretchy bind off, I mean that instead of doing yarn over before each bind off stitch, so instead of doing yarn over, bind one stitch off, yarn over, bind another stitch off, I would typically do yarn over, bind off one stitch, bind off another stitch, yarn over, bind off one, bind off one. So you have half of the yarn overs that you would normally have for the super stretchy bind off, if you're familiar with that. Otherwise, I'll put links in the description box. So, I don't know, I feel like it gives you some stretch and elasticity, but not too much. And that's it. I think I love the fabric. It's very soft. And the fact that I'm using a yarn that I love was also kind of enough reason to go back and make the length of the sweater exactly like I wanted. Yeah, since I paid a good amount of money for this yarn and I really like it, I want the sweater to be exactly how I want it to be. Back to my pajama sweater, just because you'll see me wearing this finished sweater in next episode, so I don't want you to be bored by it already. Tea season finally. It's still pretty warm here in Italy, honestly, for being of October, but I've been drinking hot tea since like the 1st of September anyway. I skip the very hot months like July and August. I do not actually actively drink cups of hot tea, but then as soon as September comes around, I convert to hot beverages. Another sip, please. Okay, cool. Second in progress object. It might actually blend together with what I'm wearing, being like a similar, very neutral shade, but this is my half and half triangle wrap by Purl Soho. I'm almost done with the first triangle. The construction of this shawl is two triangles that make up a rectangle. Geometry lessons here. So I'm actually almost done with this first triangle. I don't know if you can actually tell that it's a triangle. It's a little bit scrunched up on my cable, but I'm almost done, and then I'll join a new color, which you might be surprised about. I have it hidden here. I feel like I really wanted a combination of a very neutral shade and a little bit more of a pop of color. And I feel like in a few podcasts that I follow, the person shared such combination of neutral plus a pop of color, and I think it works very well. The final shawl will be able to be folded and kind of look like a triangle, so you can kind of show the color that you want to show at that specific time. So I would be able to wear it with more of the beigey gray color forward, or kind of turn it around and reveal more of this yellow pop of color. The yarn that I'm using is the official yarn recommended in the pattern, and this is called Linen Quill by Purl Soho. Again, I've heard about it so many times, and so I wanted to try, especially for this very relaxing and quite long-term knit, because it'll take me at least a few more weeks to work on, and so I really wanted to pick a yarn that I enjoyed. And the colors that I picked are reed gray, and the yellow is the turmeric yellow. And I've seen this used by a few people. I want to say Inga from Knitting Traditions used this as well, I think. And you might be surprised to notice that I'm actually using wooden needles. Dun 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 dun. I'm a metal needle person through and through, and metal needles would always be kind of my preferred choice, like default choice. However, what happened is that I planned to cast this on my flight to Minneapolis, which I went to for work, and the website of the airline that I flew with said no needles, no knitting needles or crochet hooks or other things as well, but I guess I cared about the knitting needles, and it said no. But I was like, I want to knit, it's such a long flight, such good knitting time, and so kind of the compromise that I wanted to go with is to not bring metal needles, because I understand this could be actually used as a weapon and it might be scary. But like wooden needles to me are very comparable to like pencils, right? Like I would not see a lot of difference, so I didn't feel like I would be scaring people with this. So I tried, and I brought these needles and a long cable and my couple of cakes of yarn with me through security, and all went well, and I was able to knit through my flight, which was lovely. So I cast on my flight, and I think it was the first time I casted on anything on a flight, and it was very fun. I now have a good fond memory, and I knit on this shawl for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks it was my only project, because in my Minneapolis trip this is the only thing that I brought to knit on. And the week after I went to the knitting conference that we can chat about later, and I also brought almost only this. So I guess I brought other things, but I knitted almost exclusively on this because it's very mindless, and I was able to chat with people or listen to a presentation or a talk and still knit on this without having to look closely or follow a pattern. And so yes, I mean, definitely cast this on and use it as like a background knit whenever you don't feel like knitting something complicated or watching a pattern and reading through the instructions. For example, if you're on a plane or the airport or a car trip, watching TV, making sure a toddler is alive for the next hour. So you like, if you need to pay attention to other things or just don't want to pay attention to a pattern, I think this is your friend. I kind of sped through this first half, and I'm glad I did it because it was such an enjoyable experience. But I feel like I could see myself knit one like through the span of maybe like 6 months over the winter, and kind of just do it very deliberately, very slowly. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see how long it'll take me to knit the second half, and it'll be in this very, very lovely shade of yellow orangey. And I kept this more brighter color as the second color in my wrap so that I can knit on this while outside is much darker. The past few weeks the weather was actually quite good here in Italy. However, I foresee some fog and grey weather coming up, so knitting on something bright I think will help my mood. We'll see if it's true. I did a couple of modifications from the original pattern. What I've done is I used German short rows instead of regular wraps and turns for the short row technique to use. So you actually do short rows, and you can see actually the rows get shorter as you go up through the shawl. As you can actually tell that there are short rows probably. And you can use the wrap and turns like the pattern suggests, or there are quite a few videos on YouTube on how to replace those with German short rows, which I personally like better, and I find them like easier to knit and even more mindless. So I did that. And I also, for the edge here, I did a simple slip stitch. So when I went to the end of the row, I slip one stitch purlwise. And these same exact modifications are actually in one of the YouTube videos that I watched. So I'll link that down below for you if you want to kind of follow the same customizations. And you can do anything you want actually with this shawl. For example, for the edge, you can do an I-cord edge, which I feel like many people have done, and it looks very, very good. And I'm using a very cute stitch marker from Martina from We Grow Wild. This is 100% my favorite stitch marker that I own. And I actually own a few of these ones that Martina made, and they're like so special. I plan to wear this half and half as my office blanket slash cozy shawl, because my office, I mentioned this before probably, but my office room is the very farthest one in the house, and it doesn't get heated as much as the other rooms, and so it'll be very chilly in a month or two, and so having a very big blanket almost will be lovely. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Okay, bye. Last in progress work that I have, I think it's the last, yes. It's my world's easiest wrap, and that I'm knitting in garter stitch. It is meant to be a wrap that you wear. Sorry for the needles ticking. In my mind is meant to be worn as like a shawl this way, or you could also fold it in half lengthwise and maybe use it as a scarf. So I'm doing garter stitch only. The only less mindless thing is a slip stitch at the edge. So I slip one purlwise, that's it, and I'm done. This is the effort that I put into this piece. This is the wrap that I knit while my daughter falls asleep at night, and so we are in her kind of dark room, and I don't have a lot of visibility, so even the half and half shawl would be a little bit too much for me to try and knit in the dark, because you need to do a short row at the end of the row, and so you also need to remove the marker and place the marker, so I don't think I would be very good at doing that in the dark. But this back and forth rectangular shawl with no short rows, nothing, it's perfect. So I can do this in the dark, no problem. And I'm using Drops Puna. This is alpaca yarn, 100% alpaca, and you can really tell it's so soft and so squishy. And I bought it for a sweater. Actually, I bought it for the test knit of the dad's sweater, but then I kind of chickened out in the sense that I don't know, was scared a little bit to knit with 100% alpaca for a garment. I feared it's gonna kind of stretch out and be very slouchy and not hold its shape as much. I don't know if that's true. I didn't want to invest lots of time and then find out about the stretch afterward, as I'm like, I'm gonna switch to a combination that I know well, which is a mohair and a fingering merino or wool. And so that's what I did. And so I kept the 100% alpaca for a cozy hug, a cozy wrap. And that's what I'm doing. I talked a little bit about this wrap in my last episode, but it was inspired by Rebecca from the Crea Bea, and she knit something similar for her mom in a different yarn, but that gave me like the inspiration of it's okay to do something very mindless sometimes. We don't always have to knit on something so complicated like color work or lace or even sweaters. Sometimes we can just do, I don't know, a piece of garter stitch and be very happy with it. So that's what I'm doing. I had 10 balls of this yarn that I bought for the sweater. For now, I've used a little bit less than 7 balls. So I think I'll maybe do 8 and check if I like the length. I actually don't know how big I want it. I kind of want it to be like a blanket. So maybe I'll do much longer. We'll see. I have lots of yarn, so nothing stops me. But yeah, if I can get away with maybe 8 balls for the shawl, maybe I can save another 2 for some other winter accessory, like a very cozy hat. There's no pattern for this. I think I was clear enough, but sorry. This is the wrong side where I weaved in my ends. Let's try again. So there's no pattern for this at all. So this is just a garter stitch rectangle. I did look at one of the Purl Soho patterns that is reminiscent of this, and I'm checking that for dimensions. So for example, to know what would be a good width for the wrap, I kind of checked that pattern because in my mind it was difficult for me to understand what's a good depth for a wrap, and so I used that measurement for mine. And in terms of length, maybe I'll check the pattern again for a recommendation of how long you should knit this wrap, but also I'll do my own thing because now I can kind of easily try it on. So that's it. Very cozy. I need more patterns like this. So I don't know if I want to, as soon as I'm done with this, cast another one on and maybe use this as gifts for people. My mom, I think, would love one of these because I need more mindless patterns that I can knit in my daughter's bedroom in the dark. So, I mean, I think I could still do like hats and like smaller projects, but then I would make sure that I'm always at the part where it's so like, I don't know, mindless knitting, and there are no decreases for the crown, for example. So I would have to have like a pipeline of accessories where I always have one in the mindless section of the pattern. I don't know if I can be bothered to do that, but I don't know. I feel like I would much prefer to have more longer term project, which is always mindless like this one. I don't know. I would accept suggestions. Thank you for mindless patterns, especially like all knits, no purling. That would be ideal for me. I guess I could make a blanket, so a bigger one, instead of just a wrap with. I don't know. Let me know. Thank you. That was it. This was my last work in progress, and I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna talk to you a bit about my acquisitions that are not been acquired over my trips, so things that I just ordered off of the internet, and then we can move on to talk about a couple of trips that I've been on and the yarn that I acquired while on those trips. Okay, so yarn that I acquired, I did order a sweater quantity of mohair plus wool, and this is Filcolana tilia and Filcolana arveta. Don't know the pronunciations, I'm so sorry, but I've seen this around quite a lot and I've never tried those. They're so soft. Both of them, actually, even the fingering wool, which sometimes I guess wool is just wool. It doesn't, I don't know, feel super like a cuddle on your cheek, but both of these feel like cuddle on my cheek. The color difference is there. So it's not that my camera is doing something funny, it's just that these are two different colors. The green is green tea. This is a marzipan melange marzipan, I don't know. So my intent is to make a Cargill sweater. This is from the Crea Bea. She recently released this pattern, which looks so complicated, so not like me, but I want to make it. And I want to have the finished fabric to be a very soft green. So I didn't want to pair green mohair with the green wool because then it would make it a green, right? Not a soft, very, very pale green with a hint of green. And so I'm gonna try swatching on like this more marzipan colored, beige colored base. And I want to see if the combination gives me that soft green that I really want. If the swatch doesn't work, as in like if you can really tell that these are two different colors, that they don't blend very well, what I will be doing is I'll kind of separate these two kids, like in school, like you don't get to play together anymore. And I'll buy a green wool, fingering wool for this guy, and I don't know, possibly a mohair for this, and maybe I can find a pattern that does not have mohair and only has wool. I don't know if I want to do a fingering sweater, but maybe I can try. But yeah, we'll see. Swatching will tell me the answer. And while buying the yarn that you just saw, I also bought a few extra interchangeable needles and a couple of cords. And so the online store, which was Las Tijeras Magicas, my Spanish is on point. They also sent me a small gift, and this is called Concept by Katia Silky Lace. And it's a very, very squishy, soft cloud. I don't think I would have bought this otherwise, just because it's a single skein, and I tend not to purchase single skeins because I don't know what to do with them. But I'll see if I can make one of those dainty little scarf or neckerchiefs, because I think, yes, I think the softness elevates this definitely to like a neck status. Does that make sense? Like, I think this is so soft that it deserves to be around my neck, because my neck is quite sensitive, like every person's neck probably, and so I think it would be a perfect match. This is 80% wool and 20% silk. Very, very soft. Okay, these were the acquisitions outside of any trip, and now I'm gonna tell you about my trips. So I went to Minneapolis for work in October, beginning of October. I've never been there actually. I've never been to Minnesota. And honestly, like I rarely went to the middle of the United States. While I was living in San Francisco, we usually kind of sticked to the coast, mostly the West Coast. We were on the West Coast, so going to Portland or going to LA or like around there, it was like an easier trip that we could go on the weekend, and so kind of sticked to that coast. And sometimes we traveled maybe to New York on the opposite side. But we rarely did a lot of traveling inside the United States, other than maybe some national parks that we really loved. But then in that case, we were like inside the national parks and we didn't really go visit the cities and the towns and the people and the coffee shops. So this was kind of like a first for me, and I loved it. I think Minneapolis just feels very livable, like you can see yourself living there. It's a very like normal city in the best way possible, in the sense there's a downtown and there are coffee shops which are like filled with plants and with wood tables, and people are chill. However, the weather is not for me. It's too cold for me. Like we had snow on my last day there. So the day that I did actually fly back home, it snowed that morning or that night, which I'm not used to. In the city that I'm in Italy, it snows maybe once a year in like December or January, but it's like a very minimal amount. So I don't know. Anyway, I went to two yarn stores. The first one is Knit and Bolt. The person at the register was so lovely. She actually recognizes the pattern of the sweater that I was wearing, which was the Cozy Classic Raglan by Jessie May Designs. And I was so impressed. I feel like I can never really recognize the pattern from a sweater. Is that true? I don't know. I guess I never tested myself. I didn't do a quiz or anything, but she saw me and she was like, you're wearing this pattern. Like, poof, mind blown. She was also watching a YouTube tutorial for some fancy techniques for sock knitting. So I was very impressed by that too. And I went with a discounted yarn sale yarn called Andorra. The brand is Kelborn Woolens. I don't know if I've ever seen this, I don't think so, but it's a very soft blue color, very soft. And it was discounted, it was half price, and so I got 3 skeins. One she actually winded up for me. I didn't end up using it, so I was sorry that I required her services and actually didn't end up using the cake. I'll use it eventually, but just I didn't need her to wind it up for me on the spot because I do have a winder here at home. That's it. I think this will be some sort of winter accessory, hopefully like a set. Can I do like a hat and a cowl with this yardage? Hopefully. I need to do some calculations, but this is my goal. While Knit and Bolt was kind of your friendly neighborhood yarn store, like I would see myself going there and kind of have a tea and just knit and chat. I think Stephen B, which is the second store that I went to, is a little bit more a place that you must go if you're a tourist. Like there's more choices, but it's a little bit more chaotic, which is not my preference. But I had to go. Also, look at this flashy bag. Also, this is not my style, but I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do when you're kind of visiting. You need to buy yarn. So I went with Cascade 220 Superwash. This, I think, it's like a pretty popular yarn. I've not tried this before. I've always heard about it from like videos and podcasts, and I was interested to try it out. Originally, I bought this for the Cargill sweater by the Creabea, but then I realized that this is worsted, which is a little bit thicker than what the pattern calls for. So I kind of changed my plans, and what I will do with this sweater quantity is either option A, the Seasons sweater by Ozetta, or the Seasons cardigan. I think it's called oversized Seasons cardigan by Ozetta. Or I have a similar choice, which I actually have physically in a knitting magazine. So I would be happy to finally use the pattern from this book, and it's called Morgan cardigan. I'll put pictures on the screen for you, but if you can tell, all of these are fisherman's rib. I don't know, I feel like this yarn like calls like squishiness. I would like kind of to have something squishy to be made out of this, and I thought about the sweater first. However, for fisherman's rib, actually there's not a lot of benefit to knit it in the round, because Anyway, either if you do it in the round or flat, you do anyway a combination of knits and purls. I guess background here on this is that I do not knit cardigans because I do not like to purl, and I knit sweaters because you can kind of go forever and ever in the round in stockinette stitch. However, I mean, if for fisherman's rib, if I anyway need to switch between knits and purls, might as well getting a cardigan out of it. And so that's what I'll do. So I think I'll do one of the two cardigans that I mentioned, and I might actually do the pattern that I already own, right? Like I have it. It's very lovely. I don't know if it will work in a more lighter color compared to like a strong, powerful blue. However, on Ravelry, I've seen many people knitting it in a cream white and like all different shades of the rainbow. So I'm sure my soft lilac version would work too. And this was my Minneapolis trip. And the week after I went away again, was lovely. I went to Vicenza, near Vicenza actually, which is in Italy, kind of in the north. And I went to Knit Italy, which is a conference all about knitting, which lasts for 3 days, Friday to Sunday. I actually know they've done it once in the past, 2020. I guess past year they skipped that, but they hope to bring it back for many years to come. So I'll be there every year from now on. The conference has events like actual talks and workshops and explanations, but it's also like a very chill chatting experience. You can kind of sit at a table and entertain a conversation with another knitter, and there are like happy hours and lunches. So I don't know, just a very cozy experience. And I was there as just a knitter, but I also taught my own class. It was just a 1 hour class, but it was very fun. I taught how to read patterns in English for people who are Italian knitters and want to kind of branch out. So a couple of the events I went to were like presentations of a couple of books. One is Knit, written by Sara Menetti, and it's a super colorful and lovely book all about how to knit different patterns. I would say this is more for like people who have a very basic knowledge on how to knit, but I did learn to take it chill, to take it relaxed. I think Sarah does a good job of, okay, if there's a mistake in your knitting, yeah, sure, you can go fix it, but you can actually wear it proudly and maybe like tuck it down and so no one will see it. But also she doesn't give you patterns with actual stitch counts. So it just asks you to measure your body and make up your stitch count for yourself. And I really like that idea. I would like to be that person. I don't know if I'll ever be. I'm very content when following a pattern who did the math for me beforehand. And I want to get there to a point where I could just wing it. I feel like with my very simple wrap, I attempted to do that. Like I didn't follow a stitch count that someone gave me, but also that's a very basic pattern. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would ever be able to do that with a raglan sweater, for example, just cast on and kind of measure my body and get the stitch counts from there. I don't know, maybe, but yeah, super colorful. Together with that goes along very well a knitting journal where you can write the notes and draw your designs, and it's kind of like a physical Ravelry. And the knitting conference also had a beautiful market area. I think there were a couple of rooms filled with yarns and filled with also lovely people who were selling their yarn, and so you could kind of spend hours there just listening to stories and asking questions and ask, how did you hand dye this and things like that. So I don't know, I tried to limit myself. I bought one sweater quantity of this beautiful squishy yarn. This is called Nocciole and it's by Le Wool. I do not know. But it's so squishy, and the colorway is Sottobosco. And green is not a shade that I gravitate towards as much, but I don't know, I seen that in person there and I was like, yes, that calls me. That is like calling me to make a very basic sweater and kind of have the yarn stand out. This will become probably a Monday sweater by Petite Knit, or it could also be like a modified no frills sweater. Maybe I could do just a folded neck on a regular no frills sweater. We'll see. But something very simple, I think, will make sure that the colorway stands out. So it also screams a little bit Christmas. Is it not true? Is it not giving you Christmas vibe? I guess Christmas tree vibes. And the last thing I bought were buttons. So I bought kind of a medium-sized brown ones, and I have 6, and I think they'll go well with any color, honestly. And I also bought a more lighter whitish cream ones. I wonder if any of these could go well with my lilac. I don't know, I'll have to think about it. But I have time because this is clearly not a cardigan yet. And that was it. And those were the acquisitions. The Knit Italy conference or weekend was lovely. I think I said it approximately 300 million times already, but it definitely was. And I hope to be back again. I hope to go to more knitting events like this one over the winter, over, I don't know, the upcoming years, because it just really recharges your knitting passion, I think. And it's always lovely to talk with other people who love the same things you love. And they give you ideas, they give you inspiration, you kind of look at what they're knitting, what they're wearing, what they bought. Oh man, so lovely. And I think that will be it for today. Thank you for listening to me. I didn't have any finished objects, but I think I managed to talk about a good amount of things nonetheless. And I will see you in a few weeks, and I hope you're doing very well. Thank you so much. Cheers.